Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we will discuss this small modern enlarger from Intrepid Camera, and I will use it in my darkroom for color printing. Honestly, this is my first video where I get the product for free and I can do whatever I want with it. Probably you already know me and you probably already know my channel. I will disassemble it. We will discuss how it works, how it handles in a darkroom, what is the advantages, disadvantages, and I will compare it to my Dark 605 enlarger, which actually more or less costs the same price on eBay as this one new with a full setup, and I will show if I can make the same corrections, if I cannot make the same corrections, and I will also make the small prints on this enlarger just because I think most of the people, if you're buying this type of a small enlarger, you don't really have a full darkroom space and you usually do it in the small batches and print something like 10 by 15 centimeter small prints. This is kind of the case. What I want to show to you how hard to set up the whole system around this enlarger and print it in a darkroom in color. So let's start with unboxing and we will discuss a lot of things later. Intrepid enlarger goes in this small box and I really like the logo. It's quite simple package and inside you have a manual with a few important notes and the description of the modes of the enlarger. The first thing which I will pull off, this is the frames for the negatives. I actually quite like them, they're really nice, really good assembled. Second thing is the body of the enlarger and the timer, which was really hard to pull off from the box. But box looks from recyclable carton, so it's quite nice and you can just throw it away. On the first glance, the controller box is mostly made from the PCB material and some 3D printed parts. It's simple, accurate, and I really think this is high quality product when you handle it in hand. On the bottom side of the enlarger we have a focusing knob, and I think just because of the background of the company, this enlarger mostly looks like a large format camera. And I really like the idea of the few small pieces which is assembled in one whole package. And I also really like the idea that bellows on the enlarger is magnetically attached to the top part. You can easily disassemble the whole part. And they use lower part of the enlarger for scanning of your film. Outer shell of the enlarger consists from the 3D printed parts. And the base plates, it's actually PCBs, so it's FR4 material with the coating on top. And I really like the quality of the whole construction. It looks and feels really solid, and I really like the metal bars and the metal frame and the front metal frame. And exactly the same goes for the controller of the enlarger itself. On the first glance, I tried without any manual, just looking around and figured out what actually this enlarger can do with this control timer. So it has a safe light for black and white, so it's a red light. You also have a different modes for color and black and white and scanning. So if you click on the mode button, you have a color mode, and in color mode it's actually turning off the screen. To mount the lens you need to screw it in the front standard of the enlarger. And it's quite nice construction, so it's 3D printed, but in the same time you can see this plastic ring with the proper threads. But unfortunately it's plastic and probably you can only replace it. So let's discuss the first stopper and actually why it takes so much time to make this review. I know from the beginning the Intrepid camera said to me that I need a tripod which I can mount the enlarger. I tried it. I actually have several tripods, but unfortunately none of them have a 90-degree boom stand. And if you don't have it, it's actually quite problematic. But even if you have it, occupies so much space on the floor or on a table, and I think it's so unpractical. So I actually try to adapt my enlarger and 3D print special adapter, and I will show how I do it a little bit later. And after that I actually moved on to the copy stand, and I put the also link for this copy stand in the description below. You can just buy it, it's quite nice. One of the best options what you can find on the market at the moment in Europe. The problem is this is not the whole package, this is not the whole system. Probably for this price it's kind of, I'm asking too much. Yes, it's easy, simple looking good photo head, but I cannot say and I cannot name it as an enlarger. So this is my first problem. and I cannot recommend it to anyone without additional stuff. And this amount of additional stuff is actually quite huge. So you need an easel, you need some kind of a stand. It should be compact. You should actually put it back and forward. But if you think even more about it, it's not really fully enclosed system. So you need additional bottles, stuff, and so on. But it's like wet part. But I'm only talking about the dry part. And for the dry part, I think the tripod for enlargement, it's a little bit inconvenient. For example, you cannot really precisely move up and down. You cannot really change the magnification of your enlarger, like how much and how big your picture. It will be not easy to crop the picture, and it's a lot of downsides. So this is why later I moved in the direction of the adapter to my enlarger, and after that I actually decided to just buy the copy stand because I need it anyway to copy my artwork and to just make more videos more interesting. So let's start, and I will show how I make an adapter for my Darst 605 for this enlarger and for camera, and you can download it in the link below. I remove my head, and after that I make some measurements and make 3D sketch of the model what I want to print on my 3D printer. So it's quite simple model with the hole for the mounting on the Darst tripod and the connection for the screw from exactly the same enlarger what I have. I prepared the model, slice it up in a process slicer, and I also used this modern new supports for the hole because hole is quite big for this print. And after several iterations and checking of the fit and which size and which offsets I actually need, I created the print. And it was actually quite easy to make, and because I have a little bit of experience and background in this field, after 3 prototypes I create more or less perfect combination of the fit, hole position and the distance from the head of the enlarger. And as I said before, you can download this 3D model from the link in the description below. So I made a quite good fit, and when you screw the screw down through the plastic mold, you get a quite secure fit on top of the enlarger, and you fit it in the end with the one simple tripod nut screw. And this is a whole setup. You can move it up and down, and this is more or less replacement with the same distance of the normal Darst 605 enlarger. And overall setup looks fine, and I print several prints like this. It works quite nice, and I really like how it functions and what I can create basically in my Darkroom. But because I want to compare 2 enlargers and I actually want to use them in the same time, I just bought this stand for camera, which I actually want to show and share with you. As I said before, this is one of the best things what I can find on the market. It's quite nice aluminum construction, and it's not plastic, and most of the parts they are made from metal. It has a knob with the feet of the height, and in the same time it has a mounting plate for the cameras with the 2 different types of screws which you can use for your different setups and the cameras. This is article and the name, but I will also put the link below. It goes with a really good quality base made classically from wood with the corners for protection in the packaging. And I really like the texture and the quality of the whole product, and for around 80 euros I think you cannot really buy anything better than this. It's a lot of good metal parts, it's snug fit, and you have one screw which is fitting it to the bottom part of the plate. And after tightening it down, I have fully functional enlarger stand, and I can also use it for digitizing my scans if I want to do so in future. It also have really nice secure locking mechanism, and you can be sure your expensive camera or enlarger never fall down from this stand. So I mount this plate on top of the enlarger, and you can remove it and put it back quite easily and quite nicely. And I really like that you also have levels on the enlarger. You can stabilize everything in the same time. So now I want to continue with the comparison prints. Because I mostly print array 4, I also will print color prints only today and compare 2 enlargers together. While chemicals heating up, I will pull up my small easel, and today I want to print portraits with a small size, because I think it's the most tricky part to get a skin tones, and in the same time most of the people, I think, will print family photos or the photos of their friends. And usually for cheap and small darkrooms, this is exactly what you do. Small negative, small print, and the compact modern enlarger. I will develop in a drum, and in principle you can develop exactly the same way with the drum as I done it before, without any Yoba big system for development. You just can put 38 degrees, for example, and rotate it for 45 seconds in hand, back and forward. So it works perfectly fine, and it's perfect setup for the bathroom. You don't really need a lot of space, you don't need to open chemicals, you don't need a tray, and you will get the perfect result in your bathroom with the simplest setup ever. As always, I make a test prints with a 3-second interval, and I decided I need a little bit warmer color than normal because it was the evening. So this is a result of my print which I get for the comparison. It was quite nice and easy to make, and I'm really happy with the development of this film with the Fuji Hunt kit. I also made a second print from the same location to just compare what results I have from both of them. And now I will unplug my enlarger and replace it with a second one, which is new, much lighter. And from the beginning I already have some questions about the cables and the connection. So we have two cables, one goes from the left and one goes from the right side. And as you can see in my setup, I have a problem with this, so I cannot put it close to the middle column of my copy stand, and in the same time I don't really see the screen if it's far away, so it will be much better if you have a tilt of 45 degrees on this timer. It's quite easy to solve with the kickstand, but for now let's look in the functionality of the timer. It has a settings, and you can change the brightness, default brightness for black and white. You also can change the starting mode, which for me will be color. And additionally, you can save current time. If you print exactly the same size all the time, you can just save it. And what I found interesting, you can change color of the scanning system. And here you have a settings in a bit depth. So basically 255 is a maximum, and as you can see, the LEDs there have a 4 LED channels. So we have a white LED and RGB LED. But honestly, I have no idea why for scanning of the film you need a white LED if you have a 3 separate channels for RGB. You also have a full blast of the all LEDs, which I think a little bit unnecessary, but this is what we have, and I think in future video I will also describe it a little bit more. And the last important setting, you can change timer resolution from half second, 1 second, or even 0.1 second. It's quite useful feature if you don't really care about the precision of the time. For example, for color print it's not so crazy important, so you can go with the steps of 1 second to just save the clicking time on your timer. So overall look quite nice, you have a lot of settings and they works fine. And because I have variety of these frames and I don't really have any space to store them, I usually probably put them somewhere in a box and they will just create a mess. So if you need a stand for something like this, I can also 3D model it and put it in the next video, just put it in the comment below. The loading of the 35mm film in this carrier is quite easy and quite nice. I really like the process. You just push it inside and the film is loaded without any problems. Problems actually occur a little bit later when I mount my lens. Because enlarger doesn't have a lens plate, your lens is actually looking on the side and you cannot really mount it to look what aperture you're using. This is exactly why most of the enlarger have a plate, and this is why it's separate piece. And also I think the focus mode on this enlarger is quite bright, but I think it's using all the LEDs in the same time. So the color looks a little bit weird, and also I need to adjust a little bit this main frame to put it a little bit higher because I cannot lift my easel. So it's also a good point that the focusing knob actually should be from the side or from the top, and the lens on the enlarger should be lowest point of the enlarger. But the sharpness looks fine and I can use small easel in exactly the same fashion, so I try to develop and make the exposure, and I get quite strange result. First of all, I just put the settings randomly and I have a problem with the light leaks. Whole of my paper actually fogged and I don't really understand what's happening, but I have a gratitude of the exposure. And I'm trying to figure it out because I used the safe mode, and in the safe mode everything is dark, but you have this red LED which is poking through the USB connection to the board inside the controller. So if you lay it on the same table, this red LED always fogging your paper. So I solved this problem, and now I have a different exposures with the no fog of the paper. But I still completely don't understand how the color correction works in this enlarger. So I tried completely ends of the spectrum on this enlarger for each knob, and still doesn't have any idea how it works. I opened the manual and saw that I need to set up 100, 100, 100 settings and make corrections with a two-step interval. So I set up 100, 100, 100, but I also have a problem here because this knobs is quite analog, and if you try to set up 100, it's quite hard to hit exactly 100. It's always or 99 or 100 or 102 or something like this. So it's too sensitive for the task, and as you can see here, finally I get some exposures and only my f-stop is a little bit off, so I close down the aperture to f5.6, and I can definitely say the brightness of this enlarger is much lower in comparison to my 100 watt Durst M605. And because I see that the picture a little bit bluish, especially in the highlights, I try to increase yellow and just apply the filters what I found in the manual. It was also not really easy because I needed just step of 2. So I try to change both of the channels. I try to change yellow and I try to change magenta with a step of 2. First 3 spots it's a change in the magenta, and the top 3 spots it's actually change in the yellow color. As I said before, I changed it only by 2 points, and you can see such a dramatic difference in color. It's not really representative on the camera, I think, but for some reason I still have these bluish highlights. Maybe it's not purely visible on this video, but you still have a strange skin tones on this enlarger. I try to play around a little bit more and try to print the normal print with same settings what I have on my test strips. And this is a comparison. On the left side you have print from the Intrepid enlarger, and on the right one you have a classic Darst M605 with the halogen lamp with the standard color filters inside. Here what I can see, I have a really good gradation of the color on the cheeks, and overall skin tone looks really nice, and I'm really comfortable with the whites. It doesn't have this strange bluish tint on top, but if you take a look on more or less exactly the same picture, first idea was, yeah, maybe it's a little bit underexposed. But if you look on the person in this shot, by the way, shout out to my friend, you can see that the frame is actually quite nicely exposed and you have really good contrast, and if you compare both of them, they look more or less the same in the shadows, and you have even more kind of a shadow contrast details on the left one. And it looks like on the left one from the Intrepid enlarger you have much higher contrast from the whites to blacks. But in the same time it looks like I'm losing some transition in color, and if you compare to test strips, even on underexposed shots you can see a little bit bluish tint, which is not really noticeable in this video, but I can see it in my light in the darkroom, that the face highlights looks a little bit strange and a little bit different, especially even if you overexpose it. It looks like it's increasing the contrast and the face looks a little bit strange, but in the same time I think it can be chemical problem, so I'm not sure. I will not blame enlarger on that, it's just a different result and this is difference what I get. But usually if the chemical have a problem, for example you have a bad developer, you usually have a problems with blacks, and blacks became a little bit bluish but never highlights. But even with the corrections, as you can see here, I try to change the yellow channel and the magenta channel, and all of them have a little bit strange tint in the highlights. And it doesn't really change with the settings. So I reprinted with the magenta shift and the yellow shift. So I make a -2 on the both channels, yellow and the magenta. And as you can see, only 2 points create such a dramatic difference in color in this picture. So, and because I was not really understanding what's happening with the color and what's the deal with these knobs and why they're so sensitive to changing the parameters, I just decided to go with my standard engineering way and disassemble the whole thing and just check how it works and what is the engine inside this thing. So be prepared to the unique content of the mixture of engineer, artist and a darkroom printer on this channel. So the first thing, I removed the knobs. They fully 3D printed from the PLA plastic with the inserts, which is quite nice. I really like the design. It looks quite amazing and quite good. And after I lift off the top plate, I can see quite nice black PCB with the mounted knobs on the top surface and some potentiometers, which is actually controlling the whole timer. And because they fully analog, I think this is the cause of the problem. When I removed the back plate, it was holding only by the 2 screws, and it's exactly the same 2 screws on the side which holding the cable for the enlarger. You also can see the 4 potentiometers which controlling the whole system. You also can see the main board, which is biggest one in this whole assembly. And honestly, these 2 boards, one is green and one is black, it's only for screen control. This small black board is a serial port adapter for Arduino, so 90% of the volume of this whole enlarger actually occupied by the screen and the surrounding of the screen. And the rest of the things controlled with the Arduino Nano. And because I don't see any constant current supply for the LEDs, I decided to open up also the box with the LEDs. It's also several screws from the back side, so I decided to remove all of them and just take a look what is inside the box. And I think it's quite nice assembled. You have really precise printing there with the metal inserts, and it looks like a professional product just made with the 3D printing. You can see it's hand assembled, and I really appreciate how much you pay to the details when assemble and disassemble this type of products. You also have Intrepid Camera logo on the LED strip, and as you can see from the back plate, this is just FR4 PCB material with a silk print on top. And the diffuser is just a plastic diffuser, but it's on top covered with some nice material, and inside you just have an aluminum foil which serves the purpose of the reflector. So now I find out that the whole enlarger controlled by Arduino Nano, 5 volts and undressable LEDs with the 4 channels, white and RGB, without any current control as far as I understand. And also, as I understand, this is not really precise way to control the LEDs to keep them stable in terms of color, but as you saw, it works perfectly fine. And also I found this mode, if you press and hold safe light, you can find that you can change on the fly different LEDs, and I think you can hack it up and use it in a setting of the scanning. But also here you can clearly see the problem with the illumination on this back panel. Sides of this is not perfect, and the middle portion is actually have the hotspot. But for this small assembly it's quite nice, and I'm really happy with the quality of the build. And also, as you see here, this power supply have green LED for this enlarger, which is no-go in a color darkroom. Let's summarize some final words about this enlarger. First of all, I know it's a lot of work put inside this small device. Everybody thinks it's a little bit easy to make this type of stuff, but it's literally not. And for this type of price, it's huge amount of work, huge amount of the material, and huge amount of development that's actually going in the background for this type of product. And I actually crazy appreciate what the Intrepid Camera done, and to push this type of product on the market is not easy, especially if you have competitors as old eBay products, which was crazy professional level enlargers, which cost back in a day like thousands of euros. You can buy this one relatively cheap. Unfortunately, I think it's still a little bit raw for color darkroom. As we discussed, it has a few light leaks from just LEDs inside the timer. The timer is a little bit too bright, and it doesn't have a safe light for the color darkroom. It's only have a safe light for the black and white darkroom. Also, I don't really understand the purpose of the white LED in this LED strip, which is in this box. I don't really understand what is the purpose and why you need to turn it on, because in reality it's actually ruining the scanning experience, and I'm not sure. I still not tested as a scanner, but I think if you can modify a little bit softer on this enlarger and make few modifications and improve the package of the whole enlarger, so provide simple stand with a knob which can change magnification, which relatively cheap, and it doesn't really goes up in cost for this enlarger. And actually, if you increase price on this enlarger, I think it will be still really good product, especially if you add here plate for the lenses, because I don't really like unscrew and screw back lenses. Maybe it's only my problem because I have two different formats, but I think this enlarger actually made to print from the different formats, because you have a different plates which goes with the enlarger. So I'm still in doubt, can I recommend it for the color darkroom or not? But I will also try to discuss it with the company openly, and probably in the next videos, if you actually have interest in this type of things, I can even modify this enlarger myself and make it a little bit more workable for the color darkroom. And if you have an interest in this type of content, also put it in the comments below. I will think what I can do and what I can suggest. But it's quite nice package for the money, and for experienced beginners, I cannot say for the classic beginners, which don't really understand how it works. But if you are already experienced with the darkroom, I think it's a really good product, and definitely direction where the industry is going. And I think it's one of the directions which you need to take if you want to go with the future of the color darkroom. You need to understand how the principle works. Can you work with the LEDs? Can you work with the low power, small, compact cases like this? So yeah, that's it. A little bit controversial, but as you know, this is how it goes on this channel. So thank you for watching once again. If you want to support my channel, in the links below in the coffee, you can drop just bucks or two for support of this type of reviews and this type of products. Yeah, thank you for watching. See you in the next videos.